Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me today for our episode talking about moving from courage to confidence and starting a leadership position in your life. And my guest here is coming from Australia, Rochelle Marie. She's helped many people build their trust in themselves and their inner knowing that they can step into a bigger challenge in their life and really create an impact and a difference in their work environment. So I love talking about personal development and how people get inspired to do these things and to really grow themselves into becoming a better person. So without any further ado, I can't wait to ask Rochelle my first question. How did you start your personal development journey?
Yeah.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. I love talking about this stuff as well. So I'm happy to talk personal development all day long. I think I've had several starts in personal development. So I think even like I joined Jim's TCP, and that was kind of like part of a really long journey for me, and I loved it, and it up-leveled me again. And I sort of talk about with my community that I've been on a personal development journey for over 20 years. And yet I keep leveling up. There's like the onion, right? There's more layers, there's more layers, there's more layers. So I think one of the key starting points for me was back quite a while ago now. I had a dabble in network marketing, and they are huge in that personal development space. And so that Jim Rohn, Anthony Robbins at the time, all of that sort of got me started on a bigger personal development journey than I'd been in. Prior to that, I'd done some personal development, funnily enough, through work. My before children career was in a bank in New Zealand, where I'm originally from. And they, for some reason back then, this was in the early 90s, they were sending everybody on a 5-day personal development course. I don't think that's even heard of anymore. But back then they must have had a bit more money around. I don't know. But I did a 5-day personal development course through work, and that was amazing. And then leveling up again with Jim Rohn and Anthony Robbins and Wayne Dyer and all of those people that were around back then. And then, to come and join Jim's TCP in the September 2020 round, which is where I saw you and your lives, which were fantastic. And then, just continuing since then. So it doesn't stop, I don't think.
Awesome. So for those of you that are listening and wondering, what is Jim? Who is Jim and what is this TCP? It's a transformation coaching program that Rochelle and I were a part of. I'm still in, and it is mind-blowing. It's transformation on the innermost level of like, wow.
Yeah.
And it's like it gets you to your core, and it's just magical to watch. I mean, you're in it and you don't see that you're growing and changing. And then you look back and you're like, whoa, I was that person? No.
It's very strange. Yeah, it is. You become unrecognizable, I think, as you keep going down the path. You're like, what were those thoughts that I was having back then? They don't make any sense now.
Who was that person?
Yeah. Exactly.
So I love it. I love this topic. So let's talk about women, especially in the workforce. And I never worked in a corporate office, but I can imagine the environment of men and women, and then having to most of the time work from a man, to answer to a man in that position. Even actually in my office space that. I was a flight attendant. So most of our managers were actually equal, both men and women in that space. So tell me more about this. Like, how is it? And how do women feel about leveling up?
So it's a little bit, but I heard you.
Okay.
It is a weird space, corporate world. I think we become accustomed to living in it. And so, when you're in something, it's like the elephant that's tied to a stake, and then they know that they can walk within a certain area, and then after a while you remove the rope and the stake and they stay within that same area. I feel that's a little bit like corporate world. It's like we're so used to this environment and what it tells us about how we should work and who we should turn up to as work and what a leader is, that we don't see it anymore in a boundary space. So it takes sort of stepping outside to really be able to see it. But there is a male flavor to organizations, because traditionally there were only men. It's only in the last sort of 100 or so years that women have come into organizations, and even sooner, since they started becoming managers and leaders in organizations. So it's very much based on a male way of working, very task-orientated, goal-orientated, hustle-orientated, and that's just being stereotypical. Not all men are like that, but it's masculine traits, I guess, that permeate our corporate worlds, and that goes into leadership, where it's male traits that permeate what a leader is seen as, and so. They're seen as being tough, they're seen as being authoritative, they're seen as getting things done and, telling you how to do things. And it's not how women traditionally work. We're far more collaborative, we're far more bringing everybody along, we are far more community focused. And so to me, it's this sort of pendulum that needs to swing back a bit from the masculine towards the feminine. And my utopia organization is one where the masculine and feminine join together, and we have, both, like, we're going for the goals, definitely. We need the outcomes. That's why we're there. But we bring people along with us to achieve them. It's not a one man or one woman show. And so both men and women need to embody sort of both of those traits, if that makes sense.
Yes, and as we're talking about this, it makes me kind of feel that, we all have this yin yang, this masculine and feminine energy in us, and yet we are usually pulled in one direction or the other. Like, that's why some women are very masculine in their mannerisms as well. So most of the women that you must be helping are the ones that are feeling more, kind of not stepping into that energy yet, like a little more hesitant, maybe more self-doubt, insecurity. Is that who you work with, and how do you bridge that?
Yeah, a lot of them come to me, and when I ask them, what is it do you think that's getting in the way of you becoming a leader in your organization, a lot of the time the answer is a lack of confidence, or I'm getting in my own way. And so, like, that's definitely a part of it, and the thought that comes with that. I think it's not just the being of it, but the thought is sort of self-perpetuating in a way. So they're not necessarily all lacking confidence, but it is a lot of it. But they're stuck. They just, they don't know what it is that they're not doing that is going to get them promoted. So they know that most of the time, they know that they're actually good leaders, and they know that they care about people, and they'll do a far better job in a lot of instances than the manager they have now, which is often a kind of a spur for people to go, I can do this better. Why aren't I doing it? So a lot of people are kind of, spurred on by that thought of, well, I'm tired of seeing people treated so poorly, and therefore I want to step up and treat people well. And so they know that they can do that, and they're just stuck. They're not sure why they're not getting promoted when they know that they can do the job already. And definitely a good lot of that comes back to the confidence and the way they show up in an environment that isn't built for them entirely. So I often say they're overworked and overlooked at work, it's just how you feel.
Yeah, it's emotionally draining too, to be in that situation. Wow.
It is.
Am I cutting out?
Exhausting.
Hear me okay? Okay.
A little bit.
Okay. Sorry. My connection's a little wonky sometimes. So tell me more about the programs that you help them, what do you work on? How do you instill this confidence? Do they have like this whole distinction between courage and confidence? We were talking before, it's just incredible to think of, like, do you need to be confident to be courageous, or do you need to be courageous to be confident, or like, what is that? I think that was such an eye opener for me when I thought about that.
It is. It's a bit of a spiral, right? So I think one begets the other, and you spiral up, and you just keep continuing to do bigger and bigger things. So, and you have to start somewhere, and so it depends where you are right now. But I think you need the slightest bit of confidence in order to work up the courage to do something. But you can work up the courage without a lot of confidence. And I definitely take people through. I've got a course that I take people through on how to get that courage to me, the courage gives you the chance to practice what it is you need to practice to become competent at whatever it is. And then that leads to the confidence because you're now good at it. And that's what brings confidence, is knowing in yourself that you're good at this makes you confident in it. But it's stepping into that courage first that sort of starts to spiral off, I think. So, we work through some ways that they can do that. And I think it kind of gets called fake it till you make it often is part of that. There's a lot more to it. But it is a little bit, and yet it's just using your courage to step into something that you don't have the confidence to do.
Right. And I know you and I, we've talked about this whole concept of creating an alter ego. And in my experience in applying for a management position, I didn't see myself as the manager. In my mind, I was just a flight attendant. And that's what held me back from moving in that direction, which I'm happy I didn't go in that direction. Thank you for that. But it was an eye-opening experience for me to even just put myself in the interviewing process to have those questions, brought to me that, and I just level up at that point in my career. So knowing what you and I know now about this whole, being as far as coaching through developing a new identity and reinventing ourselves and knowing that who we were is not who we are. And this concept, I believe, is so powerful to help people really sink into what it is they want and start to move in that direction. So let's talk more about that. I love this topic.
Yeah. So, and if we take this back to your experience, right? So let's say you've worked the courage up to apply. That's courage for a lot of people in the first place. A lot of people won't even put themselves out there and put in an application. So that piece is courage. Moving into an interview takes a bit more courage. And like you said, seeing yourself already as that person and already in that role really helps you be able to bring the courage and also bring the feeling of who that person is. And one of the good ways that we've learned on how to do that is what, like you said, the alter ego. And I loved this when I first heard about it. I hadn't heard about it before, and I was like, why have I never done this? I love it. So it is about working out who you want to be and looking at the people around you, the mentors, the people that you admire, the people that you respect, the people that you think, yes, I want to do what they're doing, or I want to be something like them, and looking at how they come across and what their traits are, and working out, okay, what of that person and maybe that person and maybe that person. Like, I like to take at least 3 people that I really admire. So one of the people I admire most is Jacinda Ardern as a leader. She's the Prime Minister of New Zealand. She's very feminine and collaborative and empathetic and confident. And, so I look at those traits and I see how she carries herself, and I see how she voices her opinions. And, I'm like, okay, I'll take a little bit of that and a little bit of that. And then I formulate this alter ego out of all of those pieces of her and the other people that I admire. And I kind of write a little story about who my alter ego is. What does she like? How does she show up? What might she wear? As many details as you want to put in there, the more the better, I think, because then it's far easier to become her. And part of it for me was naming her. So my alter ego is Raquel. And, a lot of people wear a talisman as well, so that when they need to become their alter ego, they might put on their bright red lipstick. They might put on bright yellow heels. One of the ladies that I worked with had bright yellow heels that she wore, something that you wouldn't ordinarily do as you right now, but who your alter ego, who's sort of the future version of you, this is something she'd do. And so you start with that. And then I think it's about feeling her into your body. So how does she feel when she's walking like that? How does she feel when she's expressing her opinions like that? And I sort of sit with that for a while, and it changes my physical appearance as well as my thoughts. So if I'm being Raquel, I will sit up straighter. I often call on Raquel when I'm doing exercise that is a lot more than I normally do. So if I'm walking up a really steep hill as part of my walking regime, or I'm pushing myself to run a little bit further than I normally do, I'll call on Raquel, and she's like stronger than I am and has longevity in running. So, and it's amazing. It is amazing. And I, it still astounds me how that actually does change what I'm possible, like what I can do in those circumstances. So even though in my head I have these thoughts of, I'm exhausted, I have to stop, and they're like, no, Raquel, move it, and I can, and it's just incredible to me. So if I can do it in a really tangible way like that, I know I can do it in lots of other ways. And when I need that bit of courage, Raquel's what I bring through to give it to me. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. I wrote 5 pages on my alter ego. And I get all excited when I read it. I'm like, yes.
And do you feel like you're becoming her now? Can you see how you've changed from when you first wrote your alter ego to now? You feel like you are becoming her. I genuinely feel that, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It's such an incredible tool for anyone to use if they want to create a better life for themselves.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about a story of somebody that you've helped and you saw her before and how she transformed and who she became after working with you?
Yeah. So one of my clients came to me in a pretty dire situation. She returned to the workforce after having her 3rd child. So hadn't been back for all of that long, and was working part-time. And she felt completely lost. She was being bullied at work. And then she was being accused of doing things that she didn't think she was doing. And honestly, she just was miserable. She was really struggling. And so we did a lot of work. So part of my methodology, it's the Accelerate Your Leadership method. And we do a lot of work in that course around inner work. So, getting the courage, getting the confidence, getting the strength, changing our thoughts and the way we see the world. And so we went through that process together. And I spent some sort of extra time with her because she was struggling so much. We really dove into how she was seeing the world and how she was allowing it to affect her at the time. And the transformation over the time that we were working through the course was just massive. And so she got the courage, and I do think there was a lot of courage, and I was so proud of her because she did the work. It wasn't just listening to me or, paying lip service to what we were talking about. She actually went out and did the experiments that are part of the program and did the work, and it just changed everything for her. And so she ended up getting promoted to a leadership role, which was fantastic, and she is loving it. But I think the biggest change for her, so she has, like I said, she's got 3 young children. She's got an aunt that's in hospital. She's got a whole lot of things in her life that are coming at her. And they didn't get any better through our time together. And yet at the end of it, she said, I've never felt more zen than I do right now. And that was just so heartwarming for me to hear her not just get promoted as a part-time mum, which is huge, because unfortunately there is still maternity bias at big corporates. They just think that if you're a mum, you're not as focused on your career, which is not true necessarily. It can be, but it's not necessarily. So she got promoted to a leadership role, working part-time, still having a hectic personal life, and yet she never felt more zen. And I think that was the best result that I could ask for. So
totally, that peace of mind, and just it's kind of like just that feeling of
yeah. It's just she's just
especially amongst chaos. Little kids running around, and
her life is crazy. And yet she's so inspiring to me that she is just in the middle of it and just being very grounded and very centered now, and not letting it buffet her, from pillar to post. So it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yes, for sure. So a little bit more about your technique you've created. What did it inspired you to come up with this path for women to follow?
Yeah. So the origin story. So where I started, I had my own frustration in returning to work after having kids. I was actually out of the career path for 12 years, which is a long time. Not that I didn't work during that time. I started and stopped several businesses, and I did a lot of retail work because I wanted to sort of work around my kids. And so I took 12 years out, came back to made the intentional decision, I'm going to restart my career. Because I'd had a reasonably successful career before the kids. So I thought, I'm going to restart my career, and I'll start at the bottom because I didn't have the confidence to start back where I'd left. And so I started at the bottom and managed to work my way back up to where I had been before children. But it took longer the second time than it did the first. And I was like, this is just crazy. Why is it? It was so frustrating to take so long to get to where I'd already been. And so in that journey, I sort of started stepping back a bit and looking around and trying to understand what was it that was like not allowing me to progress as quickly as I had in the first place. So it allowed me, and everything happens for a reason. So it did allow me to see more of what was going on. And it was really quite interesting from that aspect to understand more about how corporations work and what really gets people promoted rather than what you're told or what you think gets people promoted, particularly women. So I finally got to my leadership role, which was amazing. And I still work my 9 to 5. I love my job. I'm so lucky and grateful that I have a wonderful team, and it's a wonderful job to be doing. But in that process of becoming a leader, I have a lot of women just reach out to me. And one day in particular, I had a lady that I'd done a workshop with, and I was leading the workshop. She was in it, and she rang me afterwards. She said, do you mind if I give you a call after this? I'm like, no, of course not, ring. And so she rang me afterwards, and she explained to me that morning on the way to work, she'd actually had to pull the car over because she needed to vomit. And she was dreading coming to work and seeing her manager that much that she vomited on the way to work. And it literally broke my heart. I won't say literally, it really broke my heart. I was, I was so close to tears when she was telling me the story, and I so wanted to help her, but that's not my genius zone. I'm not a counselor. You know, I couldn't sort of give her any emotional support from a professional perspective. And I did make sure that she had the right contacts and that she could get in touch with the right people. And I gave her some advice just from my experience, because I'd certainly experienced some pretty bad managers up until that point. But it just got me thinking, what's going on here? That so many people are coming to work dreading it, coming to work for managers that are just making their whole lives feel miserable. It doesn't just affect your work life when you have a bad manager, it affects your whole life. You start to like dread going to work the minute you wake up Sunday morning, and you're not even, you've got a whole day to enjoy, and yet that day is sort of ruined because you're already starting to feel anxious. So, and then at the same time, I was working with these women. Had formed a coaching circle with women across different organizations, and these women were amazing. Like, they were really leaders, not in management roles, but they were really leaders. They were really, innovative and collaborative and working on themselves and continuously learning and bringing others with them, and all the things that I think make really good leaders. These women were doing, and yet they couldn't get promoted. They couldn't get up to this leadership level role. And I just sort of put two and two together. Like, this is crazy. We've got really bad managers here. We've got really good women that are ready to, step up and take on these roles and make people's lives better. And yet it's not happening. And so because of my experience, because of what I'd seen, because of what I knew by then, I thought, okay, someone's got to do something, and it's going to be me, and I'm going to step into this. And I haven't looked back. I think it's needed. We need more really competent women in our leadership roles. We need more men to, take on sort of different traits in some occasions in our roles, and we need managers that make people's lives better. And so, because I'm a mum and I'd worked with mums before in other businesses, and I love working with mums to bring that courage back, and they get to pass it on to the next generation, which I think is also really important. I think they make a bigger impact from that perspective. That's where I started focusing. But I do have, there's women in my group that aren't mums, and they're obviously just as important. It's just that mums are normally the ones that have the confidence loss because they've stepped out of the workforce, and that comes with a bit of loss of confidence, unfortunately.
Right. So I like what you're saying. Can you hear me okay? Okay, good. I just love what you're saying, because I'm all about women empowerment and for women to be stepping into their higher self and their best self. Yeah. And so this podcast is about designing our lives and stepping into this more happy, fulfilling roles for us women. And so is there any advice that you would give a woman that is considering moving forward in her life but unsure of how to do that?
Apart from the alter ego, which I think is a really good piece of the puzzle, and I highly encourage everybody to do that exercise. I think it does start with the inner work and the self-development, and then it's about being strategic. So it's definitely about knowing where you want to go. That has to come first. If you don't have the end in mind, then how do you know which path to take? So I think you definitely need to nail down, where is it that I want to go? Who is it that I want to be? And then put your strategy in place to get there. So if it's a leadership role for an organization, then it is about leveling up you with that inner work. But it's also about giving and getting support. So we do a lot of work on connection. And I think that's the case no matter what. If your end vision is a business that earns a couple of $1 million a year, then build your connections. If your end vision is a charitable or doing stuff for your kids or whatever your end vision is. To me, as women, we're so good at that collaboration piece and connection piece. And thankfully, that's what helps us get to where we're wanting to go. So I would definitely start building sort of networks and helping others and allowing yourself to be helped as well. I know that as women, we can often become very independent and not accept help from others. So I definitely encourage all women to, step back and recognize that help is actually what gets us where we need to go.
Totally. I love that answer. All of it. So good. Okay, so let's wind down this podcast with a couple questions that I love to ask. How are you living intentionally?
I think it comes back to knowing where I want to go and focusing on the things that I need to do to get there, and focusing on the person that I need to be to get there. And that's probably, for me, has been the really important piece. Like we said at the beginning, if I look back at who I was a year ago, I barely recognize her. And I think, continuing to focus on that and focusing on where I'm going allows me to live in intention. So I just, I am a busy woman, as I know so many people are. I have 9 kids in a blended family, and I have 6 grandkids, and I have a full-time job, and I have a business, and I have my health, and all of that matters. And so I intentionally do the things that matter. And, that's about knowing who you want to be and showing up as that person.
Yes. I love it. I love it. You can have all the hats on at the same time and still be happy and grounded and focused on what you want.
Yeah. And I still get time to relax, and I still go on date nights, which I love.
What? Date night? What is that?
But it's intentional. We intentionally take the time and the space to go out, just the 2 of us, and just reconnect. And so we do that often, and I love it.
Oh, that's what it is. So intention is living purposefully and spending the focus on what matters most in your life.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess that comes back to knowing what matters most in your life. What are your values? What matters? And then intentionally, I schedule some of that stuff in so that it doesn't get missed. And I think if I didn't do that, I might miss it. But I schedule some of it in, and then I create habits around it, which is a whole other topic.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Rochelle, for sharing your wisdom with us today, and just your heart. And a lot of women, we all need to support each other and raise each other up so that we can have a better work life, better relationships and family. So thank you so much for your time. And how can people connect with you and learn more about what you do?
So the easiest way is to just jump into my website. So it's herleadershipway.com. And I'm mostly in my Facebook group. It's free to join, but it's very private. So, you're in a safe space and can talk about whatever it is you want to talk about in there. So if you go to the website, you'll see the Join Now button somewhere on the page, and you can come and join us in there. I'd love to see you.
Awesome. Okay, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And remember, have a great day, weekend. It's a long weekend for us here in the States. And I appreciate you watching and commenting. Leave any questions in the comments, and we'll be back to get them later.
Awesome. Thanks,
Thanks,
Gina.
everybody. Aloha.
Bye.